Any of you guys play AAU basketball back in the day? I was on a very, let's call it, suburban team. We had a lot of hustle and not a lot of wins. That's why I talk about hoop for YouTube instead of play it. Anyway, I was thinking about it because yet again, AAU hoop is in the news. After losing two high profile young superstars in the NBA Finals to Achilles injuries, some began to steer blame towards our American youth basketball system. One where kids play 3 to 4 games in a single day, every weekend, on unbalanced rosters, with few practices, all at a high cost to parents. More recently, Amazon's Steve Nash criticized the system, saying, "It's pay to play in the States, Europe to play it's free." Outside of a small amount of scholarships at a selective few academies, the vast majority of poor and working class American kids have been locked out of the teams and tournaments that foster elite player development. Everyone from Steve Kerr to Kobe Bryant to LeBron James have criticized the organization, the style of play, and its approach to player development. Some have even suggested a move towards a European style of academy where players professionalize early, sticking with one roster on real contracts. So, how do we get here? What are the problems with AAU basketball? And why haven't we moved over to a European model? Let's find out. First off, what is the AAU? When people talk about AAU basketball, they are generally talking about travel, youth basketball designed to develop players into college or professional athletes. The system is very decentralized. That's why you could have my suburban squad on one court and the next LeBron doing windmills on the next. Not all high-level youth basketball runs through the AAU. This is considered grassroots basketball, but for simplicity's sake, most people, including me in this video, just use AAU. So what's the problem with AAU? Well, a lot. Rather than a league, AAU Hoops relies on a tournament structure. That means that you don't have a traditional season to build and develop a squad. This is because the goal isn't really to learn how to become a better player. It's to build hype. One of the main reasons AAU replaced high school hoops for scouting is because these tournaments draw in the country's best players, which in turn draws in top college scouts and coaches. And I think you could see this reflected in the style of play. You see a lot of iso ball, a lot of fast breaks, not many set plays or team basketball. I certainly haven't seen every AAU squad, and it's wrong to generalize about a nationwide system of thousands of players and coaches, but that's the reputation. There's a saying that in America, we have 5 games for one practice. In Europe, they have 5 practices for one game. That gets to another problem with AAU, the schedule. Because AAU centers around tournaments and because the season runs through the typical school year, games have to be crammed into a very short window over the weekend. That means you're putting a ton of miles on young bodies, doing the same activity with the same motions, week in, week out, for years. The demands of AAU forces athletes to specialize early, meaning wear and tear on the same muscles doing the same motions. It's very rare now that we see multi-sport athletes like Ann Edwards or LeBron James, both of whom were highly acclaimed youth football players. In 2019, ESPN's Baxter Holmes wrote an incredible 2-part piece about the links between high-volume youth basketball and injuries later in life. As one NBA strength and conditioning coach put it, these kids are ticking time bombs. Yikes. And look, I don't care where you play, every basketball game is a hand of blackjack. Every player knows the risks they're taking when they step on the court. But their odds don't get any better by playing that kind of schedule at such a young age. So I think the question becomes, if it's bad for player health and development and evaluation, who really benefits from AAU basketball? Well, the brands. The top circuits and tournaments are sponsored by sneaker and apparel companies. Nike, Adidas, Puma, New Balance, Under Armour all have their own circuits. All feature a chance to get noticed by top college coaches and secure exclusive merch. One would wonder why these billion-dollar brands would care about games that aren't televised featuring largely unknown prospects, but that's not really where the money is. The real revenue is in building relationships with players so that one day they might wear their shoe in college or, ideally, the pros. If you can sell millions of dollars worth of shoes, a few $100 worth of merch is a rounding error. So yeah, the AAU system is bad for players, bad for parents, bad for basketball, and only really exists to serve corporate interests. So how does the rest of the world do it? In Europe, as with association football, players belong to academies where they learn the game, are mentored by senior players, and even earn wages. Clubs are comprehensive identities with academy players feeding into the senior team once they're ready. It's a far cry from American sports where players reset at every step from high school to college to pro. In such a system, players have to always be selling themselves because they can't stay with the same team. In fairness, European clubs aren't all altruistic. The vast majority of academy talents will never see the first team. Their true value lies in the transfer market. If another team wants a player under contract, they can settle on a fee to let them out of their deal. This has actually happened in the NBA before. Guys like Ricky Rubio, Yao Ming, Dina Raja had to be bought out before coming stateside. And as we've seen with the likes of Giannis, Jokic, and Luka, European academies can turn out top-level talents. So with the ability to develop players more closely and keep a close eye on prospects, why hasn't the NBA moved towards an academy system? I got 2 words for you. The draft. That's right, this uniquely American invention, the amateur draft, when the brightest stars assemble to hear their names called out by the big boss. The problem with the draft, other than being a pretty ridiculous restriction on labor when you think about it, is that it is fundamentally incompatible with the idea of internal development. You build up homegrown players because they're cheaper than finding new ones on the open market. If you have to give your academy players up anyway, why even have an academy? And look, there's no chance we're losing the draft after almost a century of precedent. Still, the league itself could probably run an academy itself, but you still run into the problem of what do you do with all of the guys who just don't have it. You're also effectively abandoning the collegiate system in the process. Nobody likes the NCAA, but from a business perspective, it's very good for getting these guys on camera in March and building hype before joining the league. So yeah, that's the state of American youth basketball. AAU is kind of stuck in the middle. It's too professional than the old high school basketball system, overloading young players with too many games and corporate responsibilities. At the same time, it's not professional enough to compete with the European academy system, a place where guys can truly develop on a long-term path, rather than being passed around through program to program because they need to be sold to what comes next. Again, I hope we're able to come to a solution because I do fear the day that our national team isn't able to compete. But on one hand, we have the spirit of the game. And on the other hand, we have a lot of money. And if you've seen my college football video, you know how it ends. The money always wins.